Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to this wonderful occasion. We are so sorry that you can't be physically with us today, but through the wonderful aspects of technology, you are here with us in spirit, and we're glad to be streaming into your homes and places of business as we celebrate this historic occasion. As always, we welcome you to the beautiful campus of Wilson College, home to Hannah Jane Patterson, class of 1901, a trailblazer in the women's suffrage movement. We are honored to mark the centennial of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote with this historic marker, honoring Hannah's contribution to the movement. The founding and early history of the college coincided with many aspects of emancipation of women. Sarah Wilson's life was centered around the home, but her gift to establish a women's college made the next chapter possible. Women could access higher education, a profession, and their rightful place as leaders in the broader world. The early graduates of Wilson College were well educated, independent, and confident. They were engaged in the world as educators, activists, and humanitarians. Today, Wilson College continues to provide access and opportunity for all students to think differently, reason wisely, and act passionately so they too can become bold leaders for tomorrow. So many people have contributed to this wonderful occasion, and as you know, we have a fantastic center on our campus led by Amy Inslee that is dedicated to our history as a women's college and preserving that history. It is named after Joan Hankey, who we unfortunately lost recently, and I know that she would be so proud to be here today to celebrate this occasion. And there's not a more fitting person to help lead us through today's ceremony than our wonderful director of the Hankey Center, Amy Inslee.
Thank you so much, President Fugit, and thank you all for being here today and joining us through the live stream. When the women's suffrage bell came through Franklin County in October of 1915, the Public Opinion newspaper noted that among the state workers who will be with the bell and will speak at the meeting here Saturday night will be Miss Hannah Jane Patterson. Chambersburg is especially interested in her because of her work in connection with Wilson College. The newspaper printed a statement from the Pennsylvania State Suffrage Association headquarters about Hannah's role in the state effort. And they wrote, "Securing a majority of Pennsylvania's million voters for a constitutional amendment is a task that might well tax the most astute of politicians and the strongest of organizations. The women of the state realized this when they started their campaign for equal suffrage. They knew that they must secure the tremendous amount of favorable male votes in order to carry the Votes for Women amendment. And they knew that the only way to secure these necessary votes was to carry on a careful, systematic, well-organized, and thorough campaign. Such a campaign requires leaders and executives of rare ability, the kind that are born and not made. In Miss Hannah J. Patterson of Pittsburgh, state chairman of the Women's Suffrage Party, the suffragists of Pennsylvania have found just such a leader. By reason of her political acumen, her grasp of the bigness of the movement she is leading, and her absolute faith in the cause and the people she has enlisted under her leadership, Hannah Jane Patterson has come to be symbolic of the best influence of women in politics, and she has produced results. The newspaper went on, "Few men in Pennsylvania realize that during the past 5 years, the women have been forming and perfecting an organization with branches in 67 counties and with legislative districts, townships, and boroughs formed, and under the care of chairmen, officers, and standing committees who have been steadily at work swinging sentiment for the amendment by hard pre-election work that is enlisting thousands each day under the Votes for Women flag. 5 years ago, there was no state suffrage organization in Pennsylvania. There were many societies and clubs and little groups of women who, in a valiant way, were trying to break down the prejudice against widening their public influence. Today, there is a complete suffrage organization known as the Women's Suffrage Party, with hundreds of thousands of men and women enlisted in its membership, and at the head of it is Hannah J. Patterson. Pennsylvania, before the end of the present campaign, will know more about this woman with the direct, open eyes, the fine, idealistic face, the frank manner, and the magnetic personality. It will better understand why, during the 3 years the party has been under her leadership, it has rolled up membership, gained influence, and spread the propaganda of suffrage to every county of the state. When Miss Patterson took hold of the organization, it was in its infancy. The fact that it is now a lusty and well-grown youngster is due to her ability in organization. The burden of selecting lieutenants and district leaders from among the retiring home-living women was the first one Miss Patterson had to take up. The fact that the women were willing to do their best because they believed in their cause and would work to their utmost without hope of reward other than the golden goal of their dreams, the ballot, was the one thing she could count on. Hannah Patterson, until she became leader of the suffragists, was chiefly identified with the charities and civic movements of Pittsburgh and Wilson College at Chambersburg. She is giving her entire time without remuneration to the cause of the enfranchisement of women. As a social worker, after leaving college, she was brought face to face with the need of the vote for women. She saw the futility of petitioning and begging for rights when, with the ballot in their hands, women could demand these rights as men demand them at the polls. She took up suffrage work with a characteristic ability that has made it effective. The women with whom Hannah Patterson came in contact say that the real secret of her success as a leader, in addition to her inherent ability, is the well-deserved reputation for squareness, which gained her the title, the leader who is on the level. And even though the suffrage movement did not pass in 1915, Hannah's extraordinary ability was recognized at the national level. When Carrie Chapman Catt was elected president of the National American Suffrage Association the following month, she insisted that Hannah Patterson serve as her secretary. An official statement of Mrs. Carrie Chapman Catt, which has just been issued, included a prospectus of the coming year's work of the organization and gives the result of the meeting of the board. One of the announcements concerns the appointment of a Pennsylvania woman, Miss Hannah Jane Patterson. Ms. Patterson has been appointed head of the National Department of Organization of States as well as corresponding secretary. In making this announcement of Ms. Patterson's appointment, Mrs. Catt pays a high tribute to her, saying that she was responsible for the organization of Pennsylvania suffrage forces and that no woman in the United States is better equipped for the work. Hannah went on to lead the Women's Committee of the National Council of National Defense in World War I, earning the Distinguished Service Medal for her work. And she remained a feminist all her life and was devoted to improving the lives of others. And now I'm happy to introduce Alice Aaliyah, the first woman to be elected president of the Chambersburg Town Council.
Thank you, Amy. In March of 2020, Coyle Free Library in downtown Chambersburg hosted a local artist's photography exhibit entitled Franklin County Female Firsts. This exhibit honored 22 living Franklin County women who had each accomplished some level of first in their fields. One of these firsts was the first and only female Franklin County Commissioner, Cheryl Plummer, who served from 1994 to 2007. I was honored to also be a part of this exhibit. In January of this year, I was chosen to serve as the president of the Chambersburg Borough Council, the first woman ever to hold that position. My political agency and the many female firsts honored last spring at the Female Firsts exhibit were made possible by groundbreakers like Hannah Patterson. I'm very happy to be part of this dedication of this historical marker honoring her. Women have come a long way since gaining suffrage, but we have much work still to do. Women continue to be underrepresented in many political spaces. We must remember forerunners like Hannah Patterson, and we must continue to be inspired by their examples. Thank you. And now I'm happy to introduce Mary Beth Famulare, Director of Alumni Relations at Wilson College.
Thank you. Good afternoon. In addition to providing inspiration for tens of thousands of women across the state and the county and the country, Hannah Patterson inspired many Wilson students and graduates to participate in the suffrage movement. The Alumni magazine included reports from alumni in York, Perry, Butler, and other counties who were chairpersons of local suffrage associations. She inspired students to establish a local chapter of the College Women Equal Suffrage League, and she often returned to campus to talk to students. Patterson's example of coming back to talk to students remains essential to the work of the Alumni Relations Office. We continue to encourage lifelong connections of our alums with each other, with faculty, students, and campus life. We work in collaboration with the staff of the Hankey Center for the History of Women's Education to integrate our history, stories, and traditions into the day-to-day learning, research, and activities we experience Wilson today. It is now my privilege to introduce Mary Kramer, class of 1991 and past president of the Alumni Association of Wilson College.
Hannah Patterson was president of the Alumni Association from 1911 to 1913. She was also one of the first alumna trustees of the college. Alumna trustees are essential to the governance of the college, and Hannah, who had expertise in financing and investing, served as chair of the Finance Committee and chair of the Endowment Committee, raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for the college and for the endowment in order to ensure a Wilson education for generations to come. Hannah passed away unexpectedly in 1937. At her memorial service, Judge Sarah Soffel said, and I quote, "I hope that the undergraduates assembled here today and their sisters of tomorrow may find in the life of Hannah Patterson the inspiration that will drive them on to higher deeds, to noble achievements. Hers is a name that must not wither. Youth must ever see in Hannah Patterson the pioneer, feminist, and leader who pointed the way and blazed them the trail."
It is my great pleasure to introduce Robin Young. Robin is the PA coordinator of the National Votes for Women Historic Marker Program, and she is an independent scholar and women's historian dedicated to sharing women's history through Harrah's House, a traveling women's history show. She's the author of Women in Penn's Wood, A History of Women in Pennsylvania. Robin is also a board member for the National Collaborative for Women's History Sites and was instrumental in securing this historic marker for Wilson College. And she is responsible for securing more than 20 historic roadside markers in Pennsylvania. And here to tell us more about the Votes for Women Trail and the Pomeroy Foundation, Robin Young.
Thank you, Amy. I'm here today as the state coordinator for the Pennsylvania State Coordinator for the National Votes for Women Trail, and we've partnered with the William G. Pomeroy Foundation, and they have agreed to give us a grant to put 5 markers in each state, and each marker costs $2,000 to have it manufactured, and so this is Pennsylvania's first marker that is being dedicated. There are several more that are going to be installed later this year or early next year. And the National Votes for Women Trail are continuing to enter suffragists that are not as well known. Everyone knows who Susan B. Anthony is and who Elizabeth Cady Stanton, but we're trying to give voice to other suffragists who worked even harder and on a local level, and people don't really know who they are. And so hopefully after today, more people will know who Hannah Patterson is, and it'll ring, be a familiar name just like Susan B. Anthony. And that's all I have to say.
So before we unveil the marker, I want to thank everyone for being with us today. Thank you, President Fugit and the Borough of Chambersburg and the community of Wilson College and the Pomeroy Foundation. The story of Hannah Patterson's life was very nearly lost to history. It matters who gets to tell our stories and whose voices get heard. Places like Wilson College, with its rich repository of women's history, are essential to preserving and communicating these stories. And now as we celebrate, this happens to be Hannah Patterson's birthday. It's the 141st anniversary of her birth. This historic marker, placing the college on the National Votes for Women Trail in honor of Hannah Jane Patterson and her work for women's suffrage, will keep Hannah in our hearts forever. So if you give us a second, we'll make our way to the marker. Thank you.